Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends! What an amazing day it is! Happy Monday, and welcome back. I hope your weekend was outstanding, and you have returned bursting full of energy, ready to tackle the week. We got some serious business to attend to today. A major victory out of the Supreme Court of these United States. We've been talking about this case a while. Temporary protected status, TPS status, part of the deportation battle that we've been following all across the country, California, DC, New York, and now the Supreme Court has come back down. Judge Kagan gave us a very short order. We're going to add a lot of context to that and go through exactly what happened. But here's the headline from Politico. They're telling us something like 350,000 Venezuelans revoked. Get out of here. If Joe Biden can do it with the stroke of a pen, why can't President Trump? And so we got some Supreme Court business to attend to today. You can see we'll go through a little bit on it. The order is actually quite short. That's it. And it just came down from Kagan. It was an 8-1, baby. Big time. The only judge who is not on board is Ketanji. Don't be surprised, I know. So we'll go through it. We'll get some context. We'll listen to what the lower level judge said about this. We'll go through Kristi Noem's final reply on this. Then we'll see what the Supreme Court said. There's a lot of reaction to this. People like Pramila Jayapal issued a full statement on this. And I know you've been just waiting to hear what Pramila had to say about it. But she's out. She's saying this is ridiculous, shameful, blah, blah, blah. We'll go through it. Now, what's also happening is Kristi Noem is saying you can deport yourselves. Look how happy these people are going back home to their home countries. It's a beautiful sight. And we'll watch some of the video here because Homeland Security posted about it, said Project Homecoming, charter flights. Project Homecoming, that's beautiful. That sounds pleasant. And then we'll hear from Trisha from Ohio on with Fox explaining what is going on here now that the Supreme Court has ruled. And so some very good updates there. Then we'll turn our attention, a couple quick updates here. We got an update on this new DOJ operation called Operation Guardian Angel. That has been launched, going into California and dealing with the sanctuary garbage. You're no longer a sanctuary state, not when it comes to federal law. We'll see what they said because they're going into the jails now. And apparently something like 1.5 million illegals who are in their jails. And so they're going to get their eyes on them. Go in there and clean it up. And we've got Bill Malugin, who walks us through how it works and even gave us a bit of a tour inside the operation itself. So all that coming up. Then we got to talk about this crazy judge. You know, her name is Beryl Howell. We've talked about her here before. An Obama judge who I think just likes to sit down, have a couple of glasses of wine, and just kind of write 100-page plus disgusting opinions. Well, she was probably getting drunk again last night. And what she has given to us, this is Judge Beryl Howell. She wrote this ranting, whiny screed out of the District of Columbia. And she says, Trump can't cancel the U.S. Institutes of Peace. They're an institute of peace. How dare you? And we'll go through her little stupid memo there just to show you what's inside. It's about 102 pages, so we're not going to read the whole thing. But we'll show you what she's up to because the Supreme Court is going to have to correct this as well. And then James Comey was out today explaining his seashell debacle and was on with this woman who these two were just like perfect for each other. I'm sure they're texting each other as this was all going down. Comey came out. I think he's doing the just confused old man thing. He says, well, I was a grandfather wearing sweaters and jeans. Kind of sounds like what they told us about Joe Biden. He's just an elderly old man. He doesn't know what seashells say. So we'll listen to Comey, see what he says. A couple of clips here from him. And then some Kash Patel stuff because Kash Patel and Dan Bongino came out and they said, yeah, Epstein did it. Case closed. I'm going, what? For real? Dudes, are you sure? Like, what files have you seen? Anyways, they came out. They said, oh, yeah, no, he did it. And Alex Jones doesn't believe it. Glenn Beck doesn't believe it. And we don't either. But we'll go through it. Emil Bove also is going up, maybe, to the Court of Appeals. And so good news there as well. And so just A lot of business to attend to, my friends. I'm very glad you're here. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for subscribing to our channel. Thanks for sharing it with everybody you've ever known, met, or loved in your entire life. We appreciate it. Before we jump into anything, we want to pause and say shout out to our friend here, Scott Adams. Now, you heard about prostate cancer out there. It's been a topic today. What you may not have heard is that Scott Adams has it. And we just wanted to pause and just send our love and our prayer and our energy, our healing energy, and our thanks and gratitude to Scott Adams. Not that he's going anywhere anytime soon as far as we're concerned, but he announced today on his live stream that he has prostate cancer and that it's pretty advanced, same thing that Joe Biden has. And Scott Adams, for those of you who don't know, was the author of Dilbert, and I've been following Scott's work since I was a boy. Since I'm 8 years old, reading his books. Even though I wasn't a businessman as a boy, I still found humor in his comics, and I really enjoy his live stream, and he's been an inspiration to what we do here. I know back during COVID, many of us were listening to him. Many of us were trying to get through it together. And so we just want to pause and say thank you to Scott, and say thank you to Scott for sharing his story today with all of us so that we can send our love, our prayer, and our energetic healing vibes to his direction, because he's a good man, and I think he was a very instrumental part, well, not only in my life, that I can tell you, but in the movement, into the cause, into a whole new era that we're living in. And so we're very grateful for Scott, sending him our love, sending him our prayers. If you're not familiar with Scott, I'm going to go ahead and repost this over on my timeline. I'm sure you are already. But make sure you go send some love your way, some healing, energetic prayers. We got a lot of them, so he could use them. And we love Scott. Thank you, Scott, for everything. And we're going to see him, I think, for a lot longer than hopefully he even thinks. So we're excited to send our love his way. So shout out to Scott Adams. We love you, Scott. All right. So my friends, now let's get into the other business on the day, because we got a Supreme Court victory, baby. We love that. So let's talk about it. A major victory out of the Supreme Court. People raising their eyebrows on this one because it was 8-1 and it came out from Judge Kagan. This was submitted to her. She's a blue judge, very left, and she is joining with the conservative majority to say, nope, this program is over. What program are we talking about? Well, it's TPS, temporary protected status. And Politico is telling us this is going to hit 350,000 Venezuelans. And so we'll get some context to this because the Supreme Court order is very short. This is all we see here. And as usual, there's a lot of unpacking to do in every sentence. And so let's get some context on this before we come back out and see what this is ultimately going to do. But it's a victory for America and for the president. And so what happened here originally is, you see, this is the case as it started in the Northern District of California. They were suing Kristi Noem, the National TPS Alliance, right? Some NGO, some other organization, saying, you can't terminate status. Recall, Joe Biden said, come on into America. We don't care. Just as long as you can check a box somewhere, we're going to give you status in our country. And Trump came in and reversed all of that. So the lower level judge, and we made a full video, I believe, about this, so I don't want to spend a ton of time on it, but the judge who issued this is Edward Chen. Edward Chen came back down and said, guess what? You can't cancel TPS status. And there's going to be a stop on Trump's decision to remove them. And so here is what the judge said in the order. The government's request to stay is all moot at this point, premature rather. And so this is what Trump submitted into their brief. Then it went up to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. So that was the order. This is in Trump's brief to the Court of Appeals, to the Supreme Court rather. And again, it went up to the Ninth Circuit. So what ended up happening, okay, long story short, we fast forward through all the procedural history. This is Kristi Noem's final reply, right? She's saying, hey, Supreme Court, you guys got to stay the lower level judge's order that said that we're stopped from removing these people, we're stopped from canceling TPS. So Kristi Noem sent this one in. Her final reply on behalf of D. John Sauer on behalf of Kristi Noem said this into the Supreme Court before we got the order. They say, look, as the name suggests, TPS, temporary protected status, is temporary. It's not permanent, all right? And it grants temporary relief to aliens who cannot safely go back home. Now, Congress, when they passed the laws on this, they gave to Kristi Noem the determination about whether to extend or to terminate this designation. It's discretionary. It goes to Kristi. She decides, not some judge somewhere. Citing the code. And she can make the decision based on national interest. Now, for decades, secretaries across administrations have accordingly terminated TPS designations when, in their judgment, the conditions no longer warrant them. And that's exactly what Kristi did here. She terminated the 2023 TPS designation of Venezuela because it was contrary to American interests. So then the Venezuelans, however, they now seek to tie up Kristi Noem's determination. And they want litigation that just goes on and on and on, extended. Because remember, I think Alejandro Mayorkas came back out and just kept extending it. And right before they left, they extended it again. And they said, no, your extension's canceled. So what's going to happen is if there's protracted litigation, it's going to essentially nullify it because you can't deport them. So practically they're here. You won. Litigants have run this play before. In fact, in 2018, a district court in Trump's first term invalidated various TPS terminations during the first Trump administration. The Ninth Circuit reversed that. Then they granted review, and that remained pending until a change in the administration mooted the appeal years later. Now, the pattern is repeated in other courts as well. This is Kristi Noem writing to SCOTUS, final word, saying relief that Congress meant to be temporary is extended indefinitely, and courts prevented the then secretary from exercising her rights to terminate those designations for an entire presidential administration, all without any appellate ruling that she had acted unlawfully. So we're not going to do that again. That's what they're trying to do. Now, respondents, the Venezuelans, again, asked this court to hold off, await further proceedings, and indefinitely extend the 2023 designations for the Venezuelans. The same district court, again, as the first term, and issued sweeping preliminary relief that postpones the effective date of the secretary's determinations as to hundreds of thousands of program beneficiaries nationwide. Then the Ninth Circuit denied relief in a one-page order, saying the government has not demonstrated that it's going to suffer harm, right? This has been the modern scam lately. It's like, well, we can issue an injunction because of irreparable harm. What, for the whole country? Yeah. And the government's not going to have any harm, because they've already been abused for the last 4 years, right? Now, respondents are unlikely to succeed on the merits of their challenges to the secretary's vacatur and termination of TPS. They're not going to win. We're going to win this ultimately. And to start, Kristi says, courts cannot leverage the policy judgments. You can't find some justification to sue just because you don't like the policy. They can't supplant political branches' control of immigration policies, policy-laden discretionary decisions or more, nor should this court allow lower courts to indefinitely suspend critical immigration initiatives, meaning it is actually harming us. You can't just pause us indefinitely. It actually does cause us harm by resting on spurious equal protection claims that contravenes this court's precedent and treat the administration's considered immigration policies as irrational actions moored in racial animus. Wow. Yeah. So the lower level court, Judge Chen, he's like, well, I mean, the government has already kept these Venezuelans here under Joe Biden for 4 years. We've already had our country invaded for 4 years and much broader than that. So what's the harm if we just allow the harm to continue? Well, it harms us, doesn't harm them. That's the point. So you guys can't just substitute your judgment and just say that we're racists and bigots and xenophobes and then call that an argument. Respondents, the Venezuelans, downplay the consequences of the universal relief. They say, so what if they're here? They've already been here forever. Asking the court to leave it in place because the courts of appeal will deal with this, knowing that they won't. But the secretary has determined that an extension of TPS, Kristi Noem said this, even an extension of 6 months, she decided. What's going on? We have some audio problems? Audio's cutting in and out? What's happening over here? Let me check. Was it temporary? Let's see if it's getting fixed. Pausing. Let's check. Audio's fine over there. Okay, was it lagging? Let's see. Are we fixed? Okay, we're checking some alternative tubes. Was it a temporary blip or what the heck is going on, man? We're trying to do a show here. It's in and out. It's fine now. Good here. 5x5 again. All right, let's listen. All right. I think it sounds okay on my end. So hopefully it was just a temporary blip. We're good? Better now? Maybe it's just an internet problem. All right. We're back. We're going to cut that out. And we're back. So we continue. This is Kristi Noem writing to the Supreme Court saying, and Supreme Court, check it out. Expedited review is no panacea when it will be months before the Ninth Circuit hears oral arguments and resolves this issue. In the meantime, a single district court has barred the government from implementing efforts that the president and Kristi Noem have deemed to be essential to America. And we're going to win. By the way, among other things, Kristi says to SCOTUS, the Immigration and Nationality Act unambiguously bars review by judges of APA claims that are trying to undermine the secretary's decision. Like the law says, you specifically cannot do this. The law writes, quote, there is no judicial review of any determination of the secretary when it comes to an extension of TPS. The law says it unequivocally. It's right there. You can look it up. The bar and that bar clearly foreclosed the district court from reviewing whether Kristi Noem acted arbitrarily or capriciously. In other words, the judge couldn't say she can't cancel that TPS. Yeah, temporary protected internet services. That vacatur qualifies as a determination with respect to this extension. Here's why. Kristi Noem determined that Mayorkas's extension was improper and deleted it. They have no answer for this loophole. If they say that we can do this, saying that an extension is unreviewable, that would be ridiculous. Nothing in the text supports a disparity that she can't cancel something. The court, therefore, shouldn't even reach this and their argument that this was arbitrary. The challenge is unreviewable. It cannot provide a separate basis for the conclusion that the court reached. And so, Supreme Court, you have to accept this and reverse it. And by the way, the district court also sidestepped the judicial review bar by framing our claim as collateral, right? Oh, it's not really the main subject. It's just kind of incidental. And because it's not the main subject and it's only incidental, I can consider it because the rules that say I can't hear something if it's the main subject don't apply if it's incidental. So, but a court may not inquire whether a challenged decision is defective when a no review provision shields them, right? So Kristi is saying, yeah, they're latching on to a totally other section of the law, the APA, and trying to use that law to do something. But this law says they can't do that. And the APA says if the other law says you can't do that, then you can't do that. And they're doing it anyways. Respondents tellingly, the Venezuelans, they do not defend the district court's rationale. Instead, they offer a new theory. Like they know the law says you can't look at this stuff, but they offer a new theory. They say the secretary's registration authority is addressed in another part and that her action was more like a registration power, not a determination as an extension. Okay, so like, well, Kristi didn't really cancel an extension. She was just adjusting a registration, and that decision was improper because she can't do that. Kristi and D. John Sauer tell the Supreme Court that is wrong, okay? Just because one aspect of the secretary's reasoning touched upon the registration component of the process, it doesn't transform her ultimate decisions to vacate the extension into a registration action. Her operative legal act was vacating Mayorkas's extension. That's the act. You can't change it into something else. She canceled the extension, so it's canceled. Now, indeed, that's how they understood the secretary's action below. They attacked her decision to vacate the extension, is how they called it. And they thus successfully sought a postponement of the vacatur so that Mayorkas extension could take effect. Now, they cannot now claim that it is a registration, right? So in other words, the Venezuelans are arguing it both ways, depending on what they want and how they want to, win, frame their arguments. But for similar reasons, they say to SCOTUS, they miss the mark when they say that Christie's conclusions about the defects were not a determination. Well, no one says they were. That rationale that they cite is simply one basis for the final decision. She can have many things she bases her decision on. The relevant final determination is the elimination of the Mayorkas extension, and that involves an action by the secretary. After all, she rescinded the determination in that respect when she rescinded the extension. And just as Mayorkas and his action was unreviewable, if he wants to grant them all in, can't challenge it. Now Kristi Noem and her action is unreviewable too. Love that little comma too. That feels good. Now that leaves the Venezuelans with no other option. They have to then turn around and attack a straw man that they stood up on themselves. They contend that the government's position would bar judicial review of decisions to grant status to Mexico to 50 years. But regardless of whether the statute authorizes judicial review in that circumstances, here it's a totally different challenge. Their claim mounts an attack on the substantive considerations underlying the specific determinations. So Kristi made a bunch of made the final determination based on other things and other findings that she talked about, and they're trying to invalidate those. And they're saying you can't do that, okay, because they're part of the whole. All of it is beyond review. The district court also wrongly, Judge Chen, postponed Kristi Noem's vacatur on the grounds that she lacked authority to rescind an extension that had not yet taken effect, right? She's saying, well, the first status is not over yet. Mayorkas said you can go back to, I think, till 2026 or whatever it was, like a coward traitor, and extended it even beyond Biden's terms. And they said, well, it hasn't taken effect yet, so it's not ripe for attack yet. Now, and they say, well, since it hasn't happened yet, this is reviewable now. But even if the judicial bar review saying judges can't look at any of this, it also fails on the merits. Mayorkas issued a determination that lacked legal effect until April 5th. Noem had inherent authority to reconsider that action before it took effect, and nothing in the law says she can't. But here again, the Venezuelans turn to another straw man. They set this up. They say, oh, well, the government is now seeking to nullify all TPS extensions by circumventing statutory procedures and time limits for when the terminations can happen. But this case does not even present that question on whether or how the secretary can terminate extensions that have already gone into effect. We're not talking about that, right? If it's already been attached to you, we're not talking about those. This is a cancellation of the extension. Here, Mayorkas took the unusual step of extending TPS early. Of course he did. On the last Friday of the prior administration from that traitorous Secretary of Homeland Security who continued the invasion up until the final second. But because of that timing, his extension by its terms could only take effect beginning on April 3rd, 2025, and could only last for 18 months. Now, it should be especially clear that when the relevant agency action is legally inoperative because it has not taken effect, agencies can revisit that decision before it takes effect because Mayorkas is not in charge anymore. Now, the Venezuelans and their contrary view would reward gamesmanship in a one-way ratchet, right? Earlier administrations like Mayorkas could preemptively extend or terminate TPS and tie the hands of any incoming administration. And if you believe them, then the next administration would be unable to undo those things for more than a year if the legal effect did not take effect until months into the new administration. So you can just tie their hands behind their back and allow the Biden administration to continue the invasion. Now, their theory is unavailing. They do not dispute that agencies possessed at least some inherent authority to revisit their prior decisions. They say, well, I guess you can do that. Instead, they contend that the statute foreclose it, like the law says, you cannot reconsider. And they are citing some provisions of the law. They say that once the secretary approves an extension, another part of the law says another secretary cannot terminate it until the extension expires, even if the extension is not in effect yet. But again, this law speaks only to the termination of a designation that is in effect. Like once it's been handed out, they can't undo it. And you might understand the policy basis for that. You say, well, Venezuelans here. He's like, I'm going to be here for 18 more months. So I'm going to go sign a lease and I'm going to go, work with this citizen who's going to rent me a place. I got legal status here. I'm going to go get a temporary job over here. And then you just, now you're gone. They say you've already been granted something. And so the law is for that, right? That might be the justification for the law. But now that's not what happened. This is just an extension that has been canceled because it should have never been granted in the first place. When a secretary terminates an existing designation, the statute says that her action shall not be effective earlier than 60 days after the notice published, or if later, the expiration of the most recent previous extension. Now, the statute says nothing about whether or how Kristi Noem can vacate an extension that has not yet taken effect, and that's what she did. So therefore, she appropriately relied on her inherent undisturbed authority to vacate Mayorkas's extension before its effective date occurred on April 3rd, and that's what she did. So then the Venezuelans turn around and say, well, Mayorkas's decision was in effect, okay? It was. Like once we got the extension, we thought we're extended. But by its own terms, the extension, no, it didn't. It wasn't automatic from when he extended it. It took effect at the conclusion of the prior event, of the prior protection status. And that would last for a period of 18 months. Now, the secretary's actions could not have taken effect sooner, as the original 2023 designation remained in effect until April 2nd, right? So Mayorkas could not extend it because it wasn't over. And the operative designation was that it would be coming soon, essentially. So while Secretary Mayorkas had announced an extension months in advance and had begun accepting registrations for it, the extension itself would not have been effective until April 3rd. So it hasn't vested upon them. Indeed, by the Venezuelans' logic, the secretary's extension would have violated the statute by extending the designation well beyond the maximum term, right? So they're even saying the law says it can't be longer than 18 months. And if Mayorkas was in effect at the time, that would have been longer than 18 months. And the law says you can't do that. See, nothing in the statute stopped Kristi Noem from deleting the not yet effective agency action. Totally allowed to do that. They may not like it, but they should have won the presidency. Finally, respondents treat the Venezuelans, the lower level court's equal protection holding, the bulk of the court's rationale for postponing Kristi Noem's cancellation indefinitely, just as an afterthought. Now, that holding is unsupportable, even if it were reviewable, and it's not. The court branded Kristi Noem, this Judge Chen, says Kristi Noem and President Trump are racists for opposing the extension. No matter that the secretary retained part of the program for Venezuelans, and Trump in his first term announced deferred enforcement for Venezuelans. The court's skewed portrayal of a mishmash of comments as evincing racial animus contravenes the way this court assesses executive branch actions. Used to, right? The judges have gone absolutely nuts in the Trump era. So they actually just write that in their opinions now. You're racist. You don't like brown people. Respondents do not even defend the court's reasoning, right? Even the Venezuelans are not like, we didn't say that. The judge did. To the president's comments. And so the judge's comments to Kristi Noem and Trump are meritless. And they offer no meaningful argument as to why the rational basis standard would not govern their challenge, even if the judge could look at it, right? We talk about these different standards of constitutional analysis, rational basis review, intermediate scrutiny, and strict scrutiny. They're saying, look, first of all, you can't look at this, but if you could look at it, why would you not look at it at the lowest, most lenient standard that exists, rational basis review? Why do you think you're entitled to some sort of strict scrutiny analysis when you're an illegal Venezuelan? This court held that rational basis review, the lowest level, governed an equal protection challenge to facially neutral executive branch actions that involve immigration and national security. So in other words, it sounds like the judge in his argument was saying, since they're racist and they're attacking a person's ethnicity, that will elevate it from just being a facially neutral analysis, which would require rational basis review, and push that up into strict scrutiny because now you're targeting a suspect class, in this case, the poor Venezuelans. So here, the same standard rational basis should apply to a facially neutral action. It's not targeting anybody. It's called national security. It's called immigration policy. You don't get to go out there and take other comments in, wrap them in here, and then call everybody a racist. But the Venezuelans say that Kristi Noem's actions cannot survive even under rational basis review, which is like the lowest everything survives rational basis review. If the government, like literally the standard is, if the government has a rational basis for doing it, that's basically the test. Yeah, and they always do. They would just make it up. They say that is plainly incorrect. The court hardly ever strikes down a policy as illegitimate under rational basis scrutiny. It's true. I wish they did. They're like, no, and the rational basis review is just like, no, government can kind of do whatever it wants as long as it's not infringing on a core right. As long as they have a rational basis for it, they can do it. Only policies that lack any purpose other than a bare desire to harm a politically unpopular group would flunk that standard. Like if you passed a law that was like, you could go out and throw pies at Venezuelans or something. There's like no rational basis for that, according to most people. Secretary Noem's actions abundantly clear that bar. They are facially neutral and rationally related to the legitimate goals of addressing the significant burdens imposed by Biden. In terminating the designation, Kristi Noem expressed concerns about the vast number of inadmissible or illegal aliens that have entered the United States, the strain on local resources, the magnet effect of TPS in drawing other Venezuelan nationals into the country, right? You bring in 500,000 of them, they're going to bring some friends to the United States at a time when Tren de Aragua has already infiltrated the country, and the need to discourage illegal and destabilizing migration. Or think about the money, right, that this population sends back to Venezuela. And where does that money go and who does that support? The secretary's actions are plausibly related to the government's objectives, and the respondents and the district court could only attempt to argue otherwise by refusing to apply rational basis. They just said, you're racist, and so therefore, strict scrutiny. Now, the Venezuelans cannot rely, writes Kristi Noem to SCOTUS, on the clear error standard for a review of factual findings to insulate Chen's decision, while a finding on the fact of the question of discriminatory intent is reviewed for clear error. The finding cannot stand here based on legal principle. Here, Judge Chen's factual findings about Kristi Noem and Trump and their supposed discriminatory intent were clearly erroneous because the court disregarded the presumption of regularity, which we're on the same government, courts. Just because you don't like Trump's policies doesn't mean that you have the capability to stop the executive branch. Things should be regular. You shouldn't just presume somebody's a racist bigot if there's a more reasonable good faith basis to provide to them. In this case, it is national security, immigration, and more. Now, they continue, the Venezuelans do not even address the presumption of regularity, and especially viewed through that lens, the evidence of discriminatory intent on which the district court relied is plainly insufficient to prove that Noem acted in bad faith or that there was any intentional discrimination that would make this inappropriate. And like the district court, the Venezuelans also cite out-of-court statements. They look at public appearances. She discussed the TPS program many times and also talked about Trump's policies. They say that Kristi Noem conflated Venezuelan TPS holders with gang members to justify her decision. They say, no, she didn't. She discussed the TPS program alongside broader concerns about the effects of the prior administration's immigration policy, including concerns about criminal and gang activity from Tren. She discussed those issues, and doing so indicates that she viewed the problems as interrelated. As she explained in the termination action itself, a TPS extension can create a magnet effect to bring everybody else in, including Venezuelans who are not even eligible for TPS. They come in. And she expressed understandable concerns that the TPS program had been subjected to abuse by Biden and when levels of illegal immigration were already at an all-time high. But Kristi Noem says she never suggested that she viewed all TPS beneficiaries as gang members or criminals, and they never explained why, if she did harbor those views, why she would have left in place the 2021 designation, not the 2023. Their charge of animus against Kristi Noem are factually baseless, And it is inappropriate for Chen, the judge, and for courts to dissect the secretary's extemporaneous statements to infer some hidden discriminatory meanings that may then provide a basis for intrusive discovery. You're supposed to give them the benefit of the doubt, not just try to find any angle in which you can call them a racist. Her statements should be read for what they are. They are statements of a public official in media appearances to promote the immigration policies of this administration. And read in that light, and with due regard for the presumption of regularity that we're supposed to afford each other, the secretary's statements in no way raise a plausible inference that an invidious discriminatory purpose was a motivating factor at all. But even setting aside the merits of this case, the lower level judge, District Court Judge Chen, in his order, impermissibly grants universal relief to everybody that contravenes Article 3 and the longstanding equitable principles. The Venezuelans do not even dispute that Article 3 and principles of equity permit a court to award relief only to the extent necessary to remedy the injury. Nor do they dispute that the relief here by this judge extends far beyond what they even asked for. Instead, they say that principles requiring tailored relief apply only to injunctions, but not under the APA. But Congress did not abandon equitable principles under the APA. In fact, 705 was meant for that explicitly. And existing law at the time, under 705, says that it did not abandon equitable principles or authorized relief that goes beyond the parties, okay? If you want to sue here because you're a TPS protected Venezuelan and you think you have a claim, great. File your lawsuit, make your claim. But to then stop the entire administration from doing anything related to immigration is unlawful and outside their power. Quite the contrary, they say. In fact, 705 expressly incorporates equitable principles and focuses on the parties challenging the agency action by authorizing interim relief only to the extent necessary to fix the problem. You can't do more than just fixing the problem. Now, they fare no better, the Venezuelans, in asserting that they can get other relief under a different provision of the law. The relief authorized under this provision is the functional equivalent of an injunction, and the district court recognized that. Now, they also say that universal relief is particularly appropriate here because they need uniformity. So why can this one California judge impact the entire country? Uniformity, practical difficulties that would arise. If the government had to distinguish individuals covered by this court's order versus another court's order, and so we'll just do the whole country while we're here, why not? Those case-specific justifications would invite universal relief in almost every single case. Article 3 promotes uniformity by establishing one Supreme Court, not a bunch of lower-level district judges that issue nationwide injunctions. Not by authorizing a single Judge Chen to decide immigration policy for the whole country. Courts lack the power to require more relief than necessary to remedy the injury because they think it would be more efficient. But that is what they've done. Nor are they correct in asserting that the National TPS Alliance of Illegals is entitled to relief for all of its members nationwide. It is limited to litigants brought before this court. Courts may not grant relief to members who are not identified here, and they fail to rebut the government's arguments that awarding relief to people who are not here would violate the Article 3 of the Constitution. Organizations cannot do end-run limitations on courts by cursorily identifying thousands of putative but unidentified organization members who are all protected by these lawyers without even saying whether those members are even affected by this. And finally, they suggest, the Venezuelans, that this court should not tailor relief here because it is not ruled on the scope of available relief, and so it's not ready for their decision. But this court previously granted a partial stay to tailor a universal injunction in 2024, and they can do that here. Now, all said and done, we are going to win. The injunction nullifies time-sensitive judgments in an area that are the president's. The district court's reasoning could threaten any administration's ability to promulgate any new immigration policies at all. And the government is suffering an irreparable injury here. Here, the harm is especially acute. Kristi Noem determined that an extension of TPS designations would harm national security, harm public safety, imperil the United States, strain police stations, city shelters, aid in local communities, and more, all reaching a breaking point. Now, they see no harm in retaining TPS for more than a few months, but that ignores what Kristi Noem wanted. She terminated the designation because she determined that even an extension of 6 months would harm national interest, and she is in charge. The district court could conclude otherwise only by second-guessing her judgment. And they did, considering economic considerations, public safety, national security, and more, and the judge overruled Kristi Noem. Can't do that. The court recognized the government was engaged with ongoing negotiations with Maduro, but it discounted that, forming its own view of what might weaken the standing of the United States in the international community. The judge said that. Respondents barely attempt to defend that judicial overreach. You're not the president, bro. Respondents, meanwhile, cite potential harms to beneficiaries that are inherent to any termination of TPS. Whenever a secretary terminates this, they're going to lose work authorization. Congress, however, has already balanced this, okay? They have rules for this. When the secretary says the TPS designation is contrary to the national interest, she must terminate it. And the court has no basis for second-guessing that. In all events, none of the individuals that they allege that are currently subject to this order, many allege that they have alternative grounds for immigration status anyways. Thus, each respondent, every single person here, will have the ability to challenge on an individual basis whether the removal is proper, or to seek a stay, or to otherwise get relief from any order of removal through regular law. This court, Supreme Court, should stay the district court's decision to extend an additional nationwide layer of protection, contrary to Kristi Noem's determination and contrary to the national interest under the law. D. John Sowers sends this into SCOTUS, writing, for the foregoing reasons, and those stated here, the Supreme Court should stay Judge Chen's lower court order. And at minimum, stay the order except as to those limited who are party to this lawsuit. So, final reply that went into the Supreme Court. You see, that one was here, coming out May 9th, reply of Kristi Noem. We had other letters come in, letter to the clerk of America's Future, Citizens United submitted something, America's Future, members of Congress, National TPS Alliance, Immigration Reform Law, a bunch of people. Then we got the decision from Judge Kagan. And here is how it reads. Victory from Judge Kagan, 8-1, telling us that in the Kristi Noem versus TPS Alliance case, the application for a stay presented to Judge Kagan and by her referred to the court is granted. Kristi Noem said TPS is canceled. The judge said, no, it's not. It's extended. That order is stayed. So the cancellation now back in effect. The March 31st order entered by Judge Chen is stayed pending disposition of the appeal in the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit and disposition of a petition for a writ of cert if it's timely sought. So what you could expect then, right, to kind of play that out, is Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals comes back out, finds in alignment with Chen, basically stamps that. The stay stays in place while Trump appeals this, and the Supreme Court resolves it. So it's a victory. Now, should cert be denied, then the stay shall terminate automatically. And that sentence means that if the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals settles this favorably, Trump appeals it or the other side appeals it and the Supreme Court rejects that, then that will be final. That decision will be final because the Supreme Court says we got nothing else to add to that. If cert is denied, the stay shall terminate automatically because they're happy with the lower level ruling. So they'll just let that stay. In the event that they do accept cert, the stay shall terminate upon the sending down of judgment of this court. So again, it's the decision trees with all the branch. If we do this, then that, then that, then that. Oh, they're fleshing out all the possibilities. They say this order is without prejudice to any challenge to her order insofar as it purports to invalidate EADs Forms I-797, notices of action, and Forms I-94 with expiration dates of October 2nd, 2026, C8 U.S. Code 1254A D3. So if you're in this bucket of people who says, I have a claim under an EAD, Form 797, notice of action, or any of these other buckets that are in this category of cases, you can still challenge your removal. And I'm going to guess that's a pretty small bucket of the 500,000 plus people. Justice Jackson Ketanji would deny the application because, of course, she's Ketanji. And this is big, right? She's the only one. So of the 9 Supreme Court justices, only one is opposed to this. So any which way this goes, you saw all the permutations of how this could get back to the Supreme Court. If you got 8 of them who are on board with this, Joe Biden can just, flop with the stroke of a pen, bring people in. Kristi Noem has the law on her side. Seems like their argument is going to win the day on this. So good news there for the Trump administration and the American people. Bad news for hack judges from California. But this is going to apply, they say, to 350,000 people, maybe even more. An estimated 600,000 people came in total, but we know that there were 2 different designations, and they brought in a bunch of other people under 2023. So it was 350,000 Venezuelans that are now going to be the subject of this in a very short order from the Supreme Court. Pramila, Democrat, furious about this. She says the Trump administration is cruelly moving forward with getting rid of 350,000 Venezuelans. They face extreme oppression, arbitrary detention, extrajudicial killings, and torture there. It's crazy. It's almost like if 350,000 people were there and they were doing those things, maybe they could do something about it to stop those things from happening. Like take care of their own country rather than we just take everybody who's got a problem with their country. So the dire circumstances make it clear that we can't let, we got to let them stay here forever. It's not temporary at all. It's permanent. It's PPS is what they want it to be. Economists have warned about the administration's cruel moves on ending these things. It's shameful that they'd pull the rug out. No, they didn't pull the rug out. They just didn't extend them. They always knew it was temporary. Did they expect to be here forever? Don't they want to go back to their home countries? In fact, many of them are going back to their home countries. Kristi Noem posted this. Said today, Homeland conducted its first Project Homecoming. Homecoming? That sounds fun. Charter flight of 64 individuals who voluntarily chose to self-deport to their home countries of Honduras and Colombia. Beautiful places, I'm sure. If you're here illegally, use the CPB app to take control of your departure. Get financial support to return home. And if you don't, you're going to be in big trouble, man. You'll be subjected to fines, arrest, deportation, and you will never be allowed to return again, ever. If you're in this country illegally, self-deport now and preserve your opportunity to potentially return the legal right way. Look how joyous this is. They have stuffed animals, man. It's great. That's what we want. We want people to be in love with their home country. Look how happy you're going home. Yeah. Man, they got orange juice and everything. What a beautiful situation it is. That's great. We want everybody to be in their countries and working hard for their countries, just like we want to do here. In fact, Homeland had a full video about this. They said, today, Homeland conducted its first Project Homecoming charter flight from Houston to Honduras and Colombia. 64 people now back home. All participants were offered the same benefits as any illegal alien who self-deports using the app. They received travel assistance, $1,000 stipend, preserved the possibility that they could one day come back legally. Wow, look at this. Oh, it's even music. Gonna go home now, gonna go back to Mexico, Colombia, and all the other places, beautiful times. All right, so that's happening there, and you can see, looks pretty nice. Immigration system is working. So here is Trisha from Ohio explaining this on behalf of Homeland.
was an 8-1 decision.
Yep.
The only person who voted against it, had a dissenting opinion in the Supreme Court, was Ketanji Brown Jackson.
That's right. We got Kagan, we got Sotomayor. And John, it's pretty unusual for the Supreme Court to really rule 8-1, and especially in the Trump administration's favor. But I will say that this is such a win for the American people. What this program did was really exploit the legal immigration system. We talk a lot about how Biden broke the border, but he also broke the legal immigration system. MS-13 gang members, Tren de Aragua, known terrorists, convicted murderers, human rights abusers, they all came in using this parole program. And we really have to not just look at the border, but also our legal immigration protocols and making sure we reinstitute integrity into them and that we're actually vetting the people who are coming into this country. And so this ruling is going to make the American people safer.
Just for folks at home so that they can know how many people came in, here's the stats. 110,000 Cubans, 211,000 Haitians, 93,000 Nicaraguans, 117,000 Venezuelans, for a total of 531,680. I assume that you'll start the deportations?
Absolutely, John. That'll happen immediately. This administration doesn't rest on their laurels. We get going. We know the American people's mandate is to get these people out of the country.
So
time to go home. Temporary status was temporary. Sure, your country is fine now. Enjoy the trip home. All right, so good updates on that. Now, let's talk about some sanctuary city business that is also happening out there, because this is getting launched today. Operation Guardian Angel, now in effect, thanks to the DOJ. You can see they posted this. It's coming out of California, and it's targeting sanctuary state policies. And they're going inside to the jails. Bill Malugin is going to take us inside, and they're taking them. We were normally having to wait for a handoff, and the local jails and cities were being very difficult to work with, saying that they were going to obstruct ICE, even backdoor Judge Dugan, bringing people out her back door. Bizarre times. But the DOJ says, we're not dealing with that crap anymore, okay? Here's what's happening. The U.S. Attorney's Office, along with its federal law enforcement partners today, announced the launch of Operation Guardian Angel, a program that seeks to neutralize California's sanctuary state policy and protect Americans from criminal illegals who are incarcerated in county jails, and they're going to issue federal arrest warrants and just go get them. The Central District of California, which is comprised of all of these counties, LA, Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino, San Luis, Santa Barbara, Ventura, is home to 1.5 million illegal aliens. Wild. Among this, like 3 Wyomings, man. Among this population are gang members and dangerous felons. Senator Chris Van Hollen's going to go probably hang out. The operation will file complaints out of the DOJ and arrest warrants to allow federal law enforcement to take as many defendants as possible into custody from state jails. Nope, there are now. The program, which began on May 10th, has resulted in the arrest of 13 defendants. Woo! That's a baker's dozen. That's a lot. Those numbers are expected to grow. We sure hope so. Now, even the worst criminal aliens in state custody are frequently released into the community because California's sanctuary state policies block cooperation with federal law enforcement. No problem. We'll just issue a warrant for them and just go pick them up. Bill Esseley is the person who is launching this in California. He says, these laws effectively render federal immigration detainers meaningless because the sanctuary states just say we're not going to cooperate with you. The days of giving criminal illegal aliens a free pass are over. While California may be presently disregarding detainers, it cannot ignore federal arrest warrants. Yeah, it's going to be fun when we get one of those for Nancy Pelosi. The danger to the community of state protection of criminal illegal aliens could not be starker. In Feb 2025, this guy, Jose Christian Saravia Sanchez, age 30 of Mexico, unalived an Englewood man, tried to stop him from stealing a catalytic converter. He's like, can you please not steal my car? He's like, no, how about I just shoot you? Okay. Despite the fact that he was an illegal alien who had already been convicted of vehicle theft, and he was removed in 2013, and he had been arrested 11 times, between June 22 and 2024, it was okay. California hates their citizens and Americans, and so they just let this illegal come in, go in and out of jail, and then eliminate someone. Local law enforcement was prevented by state law from complying with an immigration detainer request, and so that dude's dead. So the goal of Operation Guardian Angel is to neutralize, as far as possible, California's sanctuary state policy and make our community safer. Yeah, it's a good idea. 13 people's pretty low on that. You're going to get a bunch of warrants, signed off on by federal judges and go round them up. I think it might be a good idea to also see what is California okay? I guess they are. They don't care. I was going to say, just got to arrest some of the politicians who are on the take from the sanctuary city policies. Maybe those policies will change. Which politicians are getting all of the handout money and skimming off the top? Just arrest them for fraud, and then a lot of this will change. But here is what the U.S. attorney said. I'm excited to announce the launch of Operation Guardian Angel, which will neutralize sanctuary state policies in California. Under the Trump administration, we will not allow sanctuary jurisdictions to stand in the way of keeping the American people safe. So Bill Melugin posted a rundown on how this works. He says, I'm going to take you inside. Says, we witnessed today an incredibly rare sight in the sanctuary city of Los Angeles. As Twin Towers Jail transferred an illegal alien inmate to ICE custody, not because any sanctuary city policies have changed, why would they, but because the jail is being, quote, forced to cooperate with ICE as part of a new federal operation designed to neutralize the sanctuary states. Writing, the new Trump appointee, a U.S. Attorney Esseley, who we just read from, launched Operation Guardian Angel, and here's how it works. He's organized a federal task force made up of ICE, FBI, HSI, DEA, ATF, working out of an office in downtown LA. Every single day, they scan criminal databases with fingerprints and identify illegal aliens in jails throughout California who have been previously deported. If they've come back to the U.S. after a deportation, they've committed a federal felony known as illegal reentry. Yeah. As soon as the task force's IDs an alien who is booked into a local jail who's got a previous deportation, they then go get a federal criminal warrant on them for reentry, a new felony, a new crime. So they charge them with a federal crime, which is, you would argue, higher than the California crime, and a federal judge signs off on that. Now, unlike an ICE warrant or an ICE detainer request, these criminal judicial warrants cannot be ignored by the sanctuary jurisdictions. And California's sanctuary state law cannot shield aliens from these criminal warrants, which is wild that we have a state that would want to do that anyways. Instead of releasing the alien inmates and ignoring ICE detainers, jails must actually hand the aliens over to the feds, regardless of their stupid policies. With this operation, we're going to neutralize these sanctuary states. We're going to flood the system with warrants for criminal illegal immigrants who are in county jails. They can ignore a detainer, but they cannot ignore a criminal arrest warrant. They have no choice. They will comply. And if they don't, if they interfere with our ability to arrest a federal felon, they can face consequences for that, just like backdoor Dugan. So Fox was granted exclusive access to the task force as they scanned databases and found a previously deported Mexican alien in a jail in downtown LA, already arrested for robbery in El Monte. They filed a warrant. They got him at the LA County Twin Towers, handed the alien inmate over to the task force. And this is potentially one of the first on-camera transfers to ICE since the sanctuary state law took effect in 2017. We're going to watch it together. The task force says once they're at full steam, they project they'll be arresting 40 to 50 aliens from local jails every week. And if it's successful in LA, U.S. attorneys can use it as a model to neutralize sanctuary jurisdictions in other parts of the country. Love it. Very smart. It's going to be it's a cat and mouse game. I mean, it's manual work, names one at a time. But you start doing that, and maybe you cause some momentum. People realize, oh, you know what? It's not the end of the world. We actually don't want criminals on our streets in California. And if the rest of the illegal alien money gets cut off because the NGOs aren't paying it to their little constituents, maybe we can solve this problem finally. Here's Bill Melugin taking us inside the ICE handoff.
In a Fox exclusive, you're watching an incredibly rare interaction as the jail in Los Angeles transfers an illegal alien to ICE custody. The sanctuary jurisdiction forced to hand this Mexican national over thanks to a first-of-its-kind federal operation.
With this operation, we're going to be neutralizing California's sanctuary state policies.
Bill Asaley is the U.S. Attorney in L.A. and the architect of Operation Guardian Angel.
California is the testing ground on this. We are one of the largest sanctuary jurisdictions.
All right, guys, thanks for circling up.
So how does it work? Asaley has created a federal task force made up of ICE, HSI, FBI, DEA, and ATF, all working together out of this office in downtown LA.
How's his criminal history?
He's got the domestic violence.
They scan these criminal databases daily to find illegal aliens in local jails who have been previously deported from the United States.
We have a warrant for your arrest.
If they've returned to the U.S., they've committed a federal felony known as illegal reentry. And Asaley's office will immediately seek a criminal arrest warrant against them, which, unlike an ICE detainer, sanctuary jails can't ignore.
We're going to flood the system with warrants for criminal illegal immigrants that are in county jails. They can ignore a detainer, but they cannot ignore a criminal arrest warrant.
The federal task force brought us with them as they went to Twin Towers Jail in downtown LA to take custody of a previously deported alien they found in their database and filed a warrant on. He was facing local charges for robbery, but the sanctuary jail immediately handed him over to ICE, with California's sanctuary policies unable to protect him from the criminal warrant.
They have no choice. They will comply. And if they don't comply, if they interfere in our ability to arrest a federal felon, they can expect to face consequences.
And the task force tells us once they're up and running at full steam, they project they're going to be able to arrest between 40 and 50 aliens from local sanctuary jails here in SoCal every single week. Now, if this is successful here in Los Angeles, the task force says this could be used as a model to neutralize other sanctuary jurisdictions all across the country, guys. We'll send it back to you.
You bet. Bill Melugin live in Los Angeles with that for us. Thank you, Bill.
All right. So sanctuary cities now on notice. They're just going to come in and get federal arrest warrants for them and then take them out anyways. So nice developments there. Smart prosecutions from the Trump DOJ. Operation Guardian Angel now in effect to save our states, apparently from themselves. All right. So good updates there. Now let's talk about this crazy Obama judge who is going wild. I think she had another wine night or something, but here it is. An Obama judge going wild again. We've talked about her many times. Judge Beryl Howell, one of the most monstrous judges back during the January 6th saga. Out of the District of Columbia, you know what she looks like. We've talked about her a lot. She was an Obama appointee, chief judge, oversaw grand juries against Trump, multiple situations, ordered Trump's attorneys like Evan Corcoran to testify against Trump, saying, you violated the crime fraud exception, and so your attorney-client privilege is breached. Tell me everything. She's terrible. Now she has come back down and reinstituted, essentially, the U.S. Institute of Peace. Remember, Trump deleted it, essentially, along with USAID and a bunch of other entities. And now she says it all is coming back. And as usual, we read through her last decision like this. It was another 100+ pager. This one's 102 pages. Golly, she must have had extra wine this night when she was ranting and raving in this screed. But let me just hit the highlights for you so you can see what's happening. I think she's ultimately going to be reversed on this, but here's what she wrote. Says, all right, it's hilarious because they get so mad. The reason why these are fun to read is because they just can't believe this is happening to them, and they're just so offended. It's amazing. So she says, the U.S. Institute of Peace was created by Congress 40 years ago, and Ronald Reagan signed it. And by design, U.S. Institutes of Peace was established by two political branches to advance a safer, more peaceful world with specific tasks of conducting research for Democrats, providing training on peacemaking techniques, I guess for trans people in the sub-Sahara, and promoting peaceful conflict resolution abroad. All nonsense without formally involving the U.S. government in foreign disputes. So what's pretty interesting about this is she admits here that's kind of a big task. So how can Congress just create a new agency that the president doesn't control? How does that happen? Since they're all doing a bunch of things that are like outside of the U.S. government. Is she describing like the CIA? without formally involving the U.S. government in foreign disputes? Well, maybe we want formal involvement so we don't have a bunch of hack organizations just going around engaging in American diplomacy without any accountability to us. To ensure the independence of the Institute, which is a scam, because there isn't unless the Constitution says we're going to create a fourth branch for this, and it didn't. Congress stated this intent explicitly in the statute, which says that they are an independent nonprofit corporation, right? The judge says, the law says that the Congress made it independent. So they're independent. Certain prerequisites for the exercise of presidential power to remove their board members. Then Congress has endorsed their important work by continuing to fund the Institute through appropriations bills. 7 different presidents signed this from both political parties, including Trump during his first term. But guess what? We're not doing things the same way anymore there, Judge. In a drastic and abrupt change of course, within the first month of his second term, President Trump unilaterally decided that the U.S. Institutes of Peace is unnecessary. That's right. He issued Executive Order 14217. And then they rushed through the actions, says Judge. They removed board members. They reached the goal of reducing their operations and personnel to a bare minimum, only to perform its mandatory statutory tasks. And they ignored the broader goals set out for this organization to fulfill. The broader purposes, right? Like they're not going to be able to go out there and what are they going to do? Provide training on peacemaking techniques. I don't know who's doing the training or what peacemaking techniques these are. Is this like when you're like in kindergarten and they're like, okay, put your hands in your pockets. Don't punch people in the face, little Robbie. Put your hands in your pockets or like sit on your hands. Remember that technique? What techniques are they talking about over there? Promoting peaceful conflict resolution abroad? The hell is that? No one knows. That's the point. It means nothing. So it's just a grift. Now, Trump canceled it and she's freaked. These unilateral actions were taken without asking Congress to cease or to reprogram these appropriations. Okay, well, Congress doesn't run it. Or by recommending that Congress enact a new law. Oh no. Or dissolve or reduce the Institute. Like they don't like the method, the methodology, the mechanism by which their saving entities are evaporated in front of their very eyes. You didn't even ask to transfer it, despite the constitutional duties that, oh, don't you quote the Constitution to us, take care and faithfully execute the laws? Don't you talk to us about that. He is taking care. That's what the dissolution of this agency was for. He is faithfully executing the laws, which is the Constitution. There are no independent agencies created by Congress that aren't touchable by the executive branch. Get out of here. Instead, the current administration decided to effectuate this executive order through blunt force, backed up by law enforcement officers from 3 separate local and federal agencies. They removed the Institute's leadership. You remember this, how fun this was? Including their board members and its president in contravention of the law. They had Doge come in there and take over their headquarters in March. With the newly installed president at the Peace Place, the administration then handed off the property for no consideration, terminated half its staff and activities around the world. You're canceled. Get out. And they're freaked. Their lawyers say they only had 4 employees left at the headquarters. Just amazing. Only 4 people left. It's perfect. Only a handful overseas, and that 0 programmatic activities are happening there anymore. And their lawyers represent only 5 employees are left. And the Institute is currently in the operational posture of being reduced to its statutory minimum. Like we got every single person we need there, not one more. It's just amazing. The question before this court, writes this judge, who's just so mad about this, is whether these unilateral actions by Trump and his administration are legal under the Constitution. By the way, all the US IP, right? If you create an independent agency, that's unconstitutional. It's got to reside somewhere. We got 3 branches of government. So it's got to fit somewhere, right? And the president executes the law. So when Congress and the executive branch and all of these morons play patty cake with each other over the last 7 presidents or however many decades to allow these independent agencies to exist, it's a grift. And it is a diffusion of their power. And that's not how our country is supposed to operate, because we want accountability for the people who we have in charge. And if you create independent agencies with all these rules about what they can do and how they're removed and all those things, that divests us of accountability over them because they're independent. We don't want that. We want to know who's responsible for this. Not some independent moron appointed by some board somewhere. No. Was it Joe Biden who did that? Or was it Trump? Was it this senator or that senator? We want to know. See, since the outset of this lawsuit, the president's removal of all but ex officio members, we've taken divergent views. Now, they say that the US IP, right, the government says, no, we can cancel them. But they say, no, this is congressionally established. We are a freestanding nonprofit. It's like, where does that live? Where the hell in the Constitution are you allowed to do that? Saying no court has addressed this novel question of where precisely the institute falls, she even knows, within our constitutional structure, right? No one knows. Though the answer to this question has implications for the legality under the Constitution of the president's exercise of removal power in a manner that violates the statute. Okay. She's one of the dumbest judges, I think, in DC. She's trying to be smart about this. Like, well, no one's ever addressed this before. It's like, actually, we've talked a lot about this all over the place. Even the Supreme Court has talked about this, right? Even the removals, we've talked about these cases before anyways. The Treasury guy who was Hunter Biden's business partner, who got removed from his position, the MSP board, right? All these independent agencies have no place to reside. They're all going to go because they're unconstitutional. So don't act like you're going to walk us through this really deep analysis of never been thought of, never addressed this novel question. It's pretty clear. It's unconstitutional. If you have to ask about it, if you have to ask where does it live, that's it. That's the game. The Institute is unique in its structure and function. That's why it's unconstitutional. Neither a traditional executive branch agency nor an entirely private nonprofit. It's made up. She even admits it. A close evaluation of the statute and its practical operation indicates that the arguments ably presented on both sides have merit. No, theirs do not. And both end up taking leaps to reach conclusions that are unsupported. This court concludes that despite exhibiting qualities of an NGO, the Institutes of Peace, right? It is an NGO. The U.S. Institutes of Peace has strong governmental ties and must be considered part of the federal government, at least for the purposes of resolving the constitutional separation of powers questions proposed here. Actually, no, that's the whole point of this. You can't consider it a part of the federal government because it's illegal. It's an NGO. That's the point. At the same time, they do not exercise governmental, let alone any executive power under the Constitution. And so it's not a part of the executive branch, right? This is this judge explaining it's just made up out of nowhere, floating around the ether of our structure. That alone is unconstitutional. Come on. Instead, U.S. IP supports both the executive and legislative branches as an independent think tank and carries out its own international peace research, education, training, and information services. Then she's going to spend the rest of this justifying its existence. She says, an independent entity exercising inconsequential government power and de minimis, if any, executive power. As an entity like this, Congress has the ability to stop the president's removal power. It's even greater than is outlined in the other cases that we've talked about, which are Supreme Court cases. She's nuts. This judge is nuts. Applying those cases, Congress's restrictions is constitutional, and so Trump cannot remove these people. And the president and his administration's acts are contrary to the law and are therefore unlawful and ultra virus. The actions that have occurred since then to reduce the U.S. IP to its statutory minimums, removing the president, replacing everybody, early termination of the staff, connecting it with Doge, transferring of the property, all of that was all effectuated by illegitimately installed leaders who lacked legal authority to take these actions. And so therefore, Judge Howell says all these actions that Trump did must be declared null and void. And so everything is canceled because she says so, because the entity doesn't really have a lot of power and it's de minimis what they're doing. and things can exist wherever they want. And so she'll just keep it in place. She says the Constitution makes clear that the president does not have absolute authority. And outside of Article 2 has little authority at all. The president's efforts here to take over an organization, it's not his organization, it's Congress's, it's independent. Congress says it's independent. And so this is a gross usurpation of power and a way of conducting government affairs that unnecessarily traumatized. Oh no. The U.S. Institutes of Peace are unnecessarily traumatized. The leadership and the employees who deserved better. Emotional damage for these pathetic, pathetic people, including Beryl Howell. Everybody who worked at the U.S. Institute of Peace who was in this bucket, who was traumatized by having your grift canceled, cry harder, all right? And grow a pair. Stop being so pathetic. An order consistent with this memo will be entered contemporaneously from Beryl Howell. This decision is insane, right? It's like logically inconsistent, even in the first part of it, as you can see. So it will be appealed. She's one of the worst judges in Washington, D.C. We'll see what the D.C. Circuit does. She has not had a good track record thus far. We'll see where this one goes. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do, and as we await this stay and reversal. Thanks for being here. We'll see you on the next one. But we're not done yet. Don't go anywhere. We got James Comey, who is here trying to explain himself. And we had these clips just breaking. Then we got some Kash Patel stuff too. And we'll round it out here. Then we'll see what you have to say about all this coming up in just 1 second. But here's the James Comey news. James Comey trying to salvage his reputation after he was made a fool by posting a very inappropriate image of seashells on the seashore. Now he had to go on this cable news show with his friend over at MSNBC, this woman here, who just oozes TDS out of her pores on MSNBC. It's actually kind of hysterical to watch and sad because she's so broken. But Comey came onto her show and he's going to explain that just like Joe Biden, he's an elderly old man who doesn't know anything about anything. And it's a very strange situation to be in that he is getting criticized for his post, which was an intimation to unalive the president. Here's the former FBI director, moron.
Between posting the picture and getting a call from the Secret Service, did you have any sort of gut check of like, well, they've audited me in an extraordinary way. I was under investigation for years after he fired me. Like, you know, did you have any regret about posting the picture?
Well, I regret the distraction and the controversy around it. But again, it's hard to have regret about something that even in hindsight looks to me to be totally innocent for the reasons you said. But yeah, I didn't have a gut check. In the Trump era, I've been investigated a lot, audited a lot. And so it's not my first rodeo. I'm in some strange way the relationship he can't get over, maybe because I've lived a happy, productive life since leaving. But this
has he lived a happy, productive life? We looked at his Instagram when he was posting the other stuff. I think it was like mostly like trans flag stuff. I don't know if he's got a gay kid, if Maureen Comey's a lesbian or whatever is going on. But that's basically what we've seen from him, showing up on MSNBC, supporting trans causes, wearing a bunch of gay flag stuff all over the place, and then posting 8647 images on his Instagram. And then he's going to sit here and lecture us as he races to MSNBC to get on this psycho person's show about how happy and unperturbed he is. If you're so happy, why are you even thinking about Trump as you're walking on the beach with your wife? Why do you have to stop and post about Trump? It's because Trump's on the brain, bro. And we know it. We can see it. You can't hide it from us.
has just been a distraction in that life.
Tell us about...
She doesn't even buy it. She's like, you're happy? You're the one who's trying to drag Trump.
Take us through all of the ways he sought to investigate you. He's been tweeting about investigating you and prosecuting you, I think, since 2017, shortly after he fired you.
I think that's right. And I intentionally don't keep track of these things, but he has, and I hope no one will, but he has dozens of times called for me to be incarcerated and accused me of all manner of things. And I was investigated repeatedly in a variety of different ways in his first term. I went through the mother of all IRS audits. which cost me thousands of dollars, but I got a $347 refund at the end. Turns out I had overpaid my taxes. But just again and again and again, I really thought that I was done. I was in another life. I was a grandfather and an author wearing, sweaters and jeans. And then I went for a walk on the beach and posted a silly picture of shells that I thought was a clever way to express a political viewpoint.
Whatever. This dude is running an op to sell a book. Don't give us the panties, jeans, and whatever with your wife on the beach story.
And actually, I still think it is. I don't see it the way some people are still saying it is. But again, I don't want any part of any violence. I've never been associated with violence. And so that's why I took it down. So
your position, even after all of this, the Secret Service calling you and bringing you in for questioning, is that the phrase, the message on the shells was political speech and is political speech.
Yeah, by somebody. I actually didn't think of it as political speech by me, but I thought, what a clever way to express a political view. The shells were the same color for each of the letters, so different colors for the letters. It took a lot of work. Somebody with artistic flair did that, and I have a hard time believing it was anybody with a dark intention, and it certainly was no dark intention on my...
What the heck? He's admiring the craftsmanship of the rocks that he built? He's like, look, a lot of detail went into that. I found the perfect rock for the 4 there. I was going to put a little dash in the 7, but I decided not to do that because I wanted to make the 86 out of gold. So it referenced Trump, and that's all. And so that's James Comey, okay? That guy used to run the FBI. The guy's a liar and obviously knew exactly what he was doing, wants to sell books. And now he's showing up on MSNBC to try to salvage his reputation in the midst of the botched launch. Now, here's Kash Patel. He also came out with Dan Bongino. Couple of clips here. Dan and Kash are saying they got more stuff coming out on January 6th. We're wondering where it is. We'll, of course, be ready for it when it comes out. But here is what they told Maria Bartiromo on Sunday.
Actually happened on January 6th.
So there is, as it seems that I find myself in a similar situation as Russiagate. Because on January 6th, in the prior Trump administration, I was the chief of staff to the Department of Defense. And I spent 4 years and a minor fortune litigating the truth because people politicized what actually happened on January 6th. And we now know unequivocally that President Trump lawfully authorized the deployment of National Guard, and me as the head of the Office of Secretary of Defense, with the Secretary of Defense, took that action. When it finally came in, because it had to have the governor and mayor of D.C.'s approval on it. That's the way the law works. And once it finally came in on January 6th, remember, we offered to them days beforehand, and they rejected it. We've put out the letters, and your show has done great coverage showing how it was rejected. We mobilized the fastest cold start in Washington, D.C. since World War II, and the largest occupation of D.C. by the National Guard since the American Revolution. That's what happened on January 6th. But what you and your viewers want to know, now that we've beat back that disinformation campaign with actual truth, is what was the FBI doing? Well, we got answers coming. We just found a trove of information, and it's on its way to Capitol Hill right now. And they've asked, and they're getting them, and you're getting answers on January 6th. You're getting answers on what sourcing was utilized, what money was utilized, how many assets were utilized, who made those decisions. You're getting it. We can only control the FBI, but you're getting it from the FBI.
That's good.
Were there FBI agents undercover egging people on?
Like I said, that answer is coming, and it's on its way to Congress.
You're about to, I saw it. I saw the portfolio of information. We dug far and wide to find it, and I'm pretty sure now we have a conclusive, definitive answer. But you and the public are going to have it. You're going to see it in writing over to Capitol Hill. But I just want to be sure we're clear, having been an agent and a police officer. There is a difference between an agent. I know you know this. I don't mean to sound ridiculous. An agent, meaning a trained GS 1811 federal agent, and a source or an asset. There's a difference. So when you see the material, which I promise you is coming, again, I'm not asking you to trust us. I know it's coming because I saw it yesterday. When you see it, I just want you to understand that it's not an apology for anything.
Thank you.
But there's a difference between agents and assets. Yeah. And I just hope when people...
All right, CHSs, agents, and all the things. There's going to be a bunch of different, we know there's a bunch of different labels and categories. And a lot of that is by design. It's security by obscurity. If you call everybody else something different, when somebody comes in and says, How many feds were out there? They say, well, 0. Because to them, a fed is somebody who has all of these things listed, this category over here. So clearly there's no feds. When we say feds, we're talking about anybody fed adjacent, okay? To somebody talking to a federal agent at some level in the chain of custody, every CHS or every street, whatever they want to call them, and they'll come up with something for them. Were they talking to an FBI agent? I don't care if there were 5 FBI agents. Did they have 500 CHSs who were out there in the crowd? And just to be clear on this, we're going to get maybe 10% of the full story from these two guys, which I appreciate if they do deliver us some materials. I have my doubts about it. But HSI was the other agency, Homeland Security Investigations, who had the majority of the assets there on that day, based on our numbers, based on what we saw in the Proud Boys trial. Those are government adjacent people. No one's even talking about them. Okay, we're going to get an FBI report. You saw in the Chiron down here that they said, oh, wow, 26. Where was that Chiron? There it is. Here, examining. I just saw it. It was in this one right there. There it goes. 26 FBI confidential human sources were in the crowd outside Capitol on January 6th, right? They're calling them CHSs there. Okay, how many agents were there? And I would guess that number is way bigger. And if you say how many CHSs were there on behalf of Homeland Security Investigations, that number is way bigger, right? Don't have FBI agents there because everyone's going to ask for FBI agents. And so that better be a part of the story. And when Cash says, I can only talk about the FBI agents, I go, yeah. So should we be screaming at Christie to tell us about Homeland? Now, here's another clip that's capturing a lot of attention here. They say Epstein did it to himself.
You said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to? I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
I know it's hard work.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. We listened to that this morning too, and the first time I heard it, I go, "What?" Cash Patel, he's like, "Well, just trust me on this one," and then Dan Bongino, well, just trust me on this one. I've seen the file. It's like, all right. Come on, you guys. You weren't saying that 6 months ago. Here's what Alex Jones wrote about it. He says, overall, I think Cash Patel and Dan are doing a great job. But on this claim of Epstein's death, I call BS. Epstein is a confirmed self-elimination. What? It says, first of all, Maureen Comey, disgraced daughter of James Comey, was in charge of the investigation, which isn't a good start. She also lost the jailhouse footage, technical error. Yeah, right. Then on top of the lost and erased tapes through a technical error, the guards fell asleep. They were supposed to be watching him. One of them was on 24-hour surveillance for a self-elimination watch. There are rumors and a video you can search which claim other nitrous oxide. Either way, the tapes go missing. The whole thing is ridiculous. Glenn Beck said the same thing. He said, now they claim, these two guys, that Epstein's death wasn't an elimination. They didn't used to believe that, and I still don't believe that, says Glenn. But he knows them. He says, I know Dan. I think he's credible. He loves his country. I know Cash. He's honorable. He loves his country. But in order for us to believe this, they got to give us more than their just little, I read the file. Release it. The full unredacted forensic and autopsy reports, the surveillance footage or sworn testimony from neutral parties confirming no foul play went down, the entire timeline of that camera, the video leading up to it, when it went out, the exact moment it turned off, why it broke, why the most high-profile prisoner in America was removed from self-elimination watch just days before. Most of all, what changed Dan and Cash's minds? Because they weren't saying that 6 months ago. I tend to believe Patel and Bongino, says Dan. I don't believe there's some sort of conspiracy inside MAGA, but I do believe that Epstein didn't eliminate himself with a paper sheet. So show us the facts. We must restore trust. Yeah, it's like, and honestly, watching these two dudes in this interview, they seem like there's somebody with a gun to their backs, both of them. You know, it seems a little bit different. I understand when you become something. You have to change your position a little bit. Like if I suddenly became the White House press secretary, I probably wouldn't call Fani Willis Big Fanny anymore. Maybe, probably not. It'd be like, professional. Like, all right, Fani Willis from Georgia, or Tish James, like we couldn't talk about her stinky feet. So you have to change a little bit. But I would still think Letitia James is a Tish, clearly. Like that is not going to change. So substantively, feels like it's a little bit strange, but I don't know. I don't know the dudes, but I think the facts speak for themselves. But all that being said, we're happy the FBI is maturing in a better direction than Comey. And shout out to Emil Bove. This guy represented Trump a lot, did a great job, and now he's under consideration to be on the Court of Appeals, which would just be outstanding. So Emil Bove, shout out, has been doing some good work. We've been following him for a long time. They say Trump is considering nominating him to go up to the Court of Appeals. There's a vacancy in the Third Circuit, which covers Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. And so we, of course, are happy to see that. But lots of changes out there in the DC power structure, from Comey to Kash to Dan to Emil. All we want are answers and justice. And of course, we'll be here continuing to demand them. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, my friends. Well, it has been a beautiful stream today. If you're just joining us, thanks for being here. Quick recap on what we talked about. We had a very, very good ruling from the Supreme Court of these United States. 8-1 ruling coming down out of Judge Kagan's hands on May 19th, fresh out of the oven. We read through the very short order, but we did more of the heavy lifting and read the final reply from Kristi Noem that really obliterated the lower level judge, Judge Chen, and was persuasive to the Supreme Court. Obviously, they bought it, and it is the better argument. So good news there. What that means is 350,000 Venezuelans for the time being are not going to have their TPS status extended, which is the opposite of what the lower level judge ordered. And so a positive development there, and a nice development from the Supreme Court to come down on the right side for once. We heard from Tricia from Ohio, from Homeland, and we're seeing these cases resolve, which is good, or at least start to resolve. We then talked about sanctuary cities and how Operation Guardian Angel has now been launched. They're getting federal arrest warrants to go into the local sanctuary jails and pick them up on federal felonies. Take them out of there. If the states won't hand them over, they'll come get them. We then read through Judge Howell, who is just nuts, read through her little opinion here, where she brought back the U.S. Institute of Peace because even though she admits she has no idea where this entity exists in our constitutional order, they still do important work. And she likes them around, and so she'll just keep them in power. So we read through that, and then we wrapped it up with a little Comey update and Kash and Dan conversation. And we're going to, continue to give them the benefit of the doubt on this stuff, but we also would like to see some answers. So we'll talk about that, of course. A lot more will be developing as soon as they give us those documents soon. But now, my friends, it is time to hear from you. And thank you for being here. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for liking this video if you haven't done so already. We're grateful to have you here. We want to see what you have to say about all this. Let's say hello to our friends on YouTube, on Locals, on X, and see who's joining us on the day. Thank you for supporting our work with these donos, these membos. We got some new membos joining us. Amazing news. We got some mods clipping for us. Thank you to our amazing mods. It's Monday. It sure is Monday. Happy Monday, my friends. Hope your weekend was outstanding and you're bursting with energy today. Hey, Susan Lazier. What's up, Susan? And welcome to our new members. We had a great members-only stream this morning. We talked about Biden's prostate cancer this morning, a lot this morning. So, yeah, all that's coming out. Thank you, Susan Lazier, for that. Hey, Harold Greer is here. What's up, Harold Greer? Thank you for becoming a membo. Harold in the house. Or for being a membo, bringing in 5 more membos. Schechter is here. Suzanne Wynn Shittles here. We got Georgia Peaches. What's up? Worst Viking ever is here. And Jacob Hydeon. Gifted membos, courtesy of our friend, Harold Greer. Thank you, Harold. JB Films. What's up, JB Films? Thank you for becoming a membo. Grabbed the stream this morning. Hey, Casimir Guzzi. Your clock is still late, counselor. Do we concur? I know. I'm getting I'm like a minute late now with the countdown timer. having to work on my timing a little bit. We're working on it. We're going to get this clock back on sync, baby. Hey, Chubby Stubby posted this on Local, says, yeah, so I'm going to need you to go ahead and cancel those TPS reports. You can just ship them all back to Venezuela and have a nice weekend. Thank you for that from Office Space Meme. Thank you, Chubby. What's going on? This old guy. Hey, we temporarily lost our temporary protected status on Locals, and we had a temporary internet problem. Locals was saying you guys were having some chat problems or something. Is it back? Hopefully. Thank you, this old guy. Great to see you. Hey, Muffin Rando, 19 months as a membo, says leave the stream and come back in. It's going to fix your issue, fam, if you're on YouTube, probably. Yeah, we switched our whole our streaming setup so that wouldn't happen, and then now apparently it's still happening. Thank you for that. Hey, Doan, what's up, Doan? Says, so the folks in the SCOTUS finally came home. The folks in the SCOTUS finally came home. Honestly, and we're having a hard time distinguishing between the cases. Like, do they just hate the Alien Enemies Act? Is it just about notice? Like, why did we get the other decision the other way on the other case? How do you reconcile their decisions? Ravicus, what's up? Here's a picture of Amy Coney Barrett, says, if the Catholic Church is for open borders, should I recuse myself for bias? Is she Catholic? Is that why? Maybe? I think I knew that. What's up? Thank you for that one, Ravicus. Doan, what's up? Does Mayorkas skate for lying like he did to Congress? I mean, probably. I think probably, right? All these people. Like, are they going to end up in handcuffs if you want to place odds on it? Unlikely, unfortunately. Q Essence. What's up, Q Essence? Thanks for becoming a supporter. See you on the Membo stream. Mark Shaw says, Comey is a weasel. That's right. Yeah, no, he's just a nice old man walking on the beach in his jeans, writing books. They're terrible. Chief Vince. What's up, Chief Vince? 5 more Membos coming in, courtesy of Chief Vince. What's up, Anthony Braze coming in. Michael Thompson, welcome. Kopak. What's up, Amy Perkins? And Kent Cook. Gifted Membos, courtesy of Chief Vince in the house. Thank you, Chief Vince. NY Renal on Local says, all right, so when these Venezuelans got special treatment, they invoked their Venezuelan heritage to get it over, say, Ecuadorian and other South Americans. So when you end the program, it's racist? Not. Yeah, I mean, I guess TPS is for certain countries and certain people, which would prioritize them over others. So I think in a way it is kind of racist. You're choosing people. Hey, what's up? Freedom Forever. What's up? Says, hey, Freedom. Says, hey, I just wanted to share about a cause that's really close to my heart. Helping honor my husband, Kevin, in the respectful way he deserves. He passed away on May 4th of this year, 2025. I'm so sorry to hear this, Freedom Forever. Shout out to your husband, Kevin. And here's Kevin. Man, Kevin, rest in peace. Kevin Kubley, our heartfelt angel, raising some money to honor your husband. Thank you, Freedom Forever. And thanks for sharing that. My friends, if you're feeling generous today, you want to go support a cause, I'm sure you explain more about what it's for and what you're going to do with it and how you're going to honor him. But rest in peace to Kevin Kubley. Man, we've been talking, or Kubley, we've been talking about a lot of death lately this morning too. We talked a lot about death, and it's, it's a topic when stuff happens, and it's a heavy topic. We'll be reunited again with our loved ones, but not yet. Not yet. Thank you for that. Freedom Forever. My friends, there's the GoFundMe if you want to go send some love over there to Kevin Kubley. Rest in peace, Kevin. And peace to you, Freedom. We appreciate you saying that. Shout out. What's up? Bassoon is here. Bassoon. Thank you for the dono, Bassoon. And thanks for watching the show. We appreciate you too. NY says, okay, so whoever they get on the 3-judge panel for the Ninth Circuit makes a huge difference for the stay on the Nome case. They never tell us how judges get picked. Congress should require Article 3 court to see how the selection is done. Yeah, and right, the Ninth Circuit could come back and issue a ruling that is also bad. So that is a possibility. Freedom Forever. What's up, Freedom Forever? Thank you for becoming a membo and joining up on this stream. We appreciate you being here, Freedom. Knox is here. Knox had a beautiful comment this morning about her boy, her pup boy, who also passed away recently. It was a beautiful comment. Knox says, hey, happy Monday, all. My daughter-in-law is an LPR from Colombia. She's quite homesick and is heading home for a visit, the first since her status changed. They both love the place. My son was there for work, hence how they met. They explained that the country is only rough in the big cities, just like here. The airport is the most dangerous area with gangs waiting for drug tourists. Yeah. From Colombia, huh? Yeah, man, it's a beautiful part of the world. I think that's probably, accurate. You get away from most people, get into a community, and you're safe. Yeah, good to see you, Knox. Shout out to your son and daughter-in-law. NY, what's up? So healthcare workers are threatened with licensure revocation if we help ICE in any way. Can you believe that? That's pretty amazing. So, like, how would that work? If you're treating an illegal and they come in and they're like, we're taking this illegal, and you're like, no, you can lose your license. Interesting. I'm wondering how that practically comes up. NY, thank you. James Anderson, 4 months as a member. Thanks for being over here 4 months, James, on YouTube. Says, deport Venezuelan illegals via SpaceX rockets. I don't know how many you can fit on there. I don't know what is it a good ROI? I don't versus a 747, for example. I don't know. I mean, I kind of want to go on a SpaceX rocket, so it's like deport me up there. Rachel Riley, what's up? Hey, Rachel, thanks for becoming a member. We'll see you on the Membo streams. Fred Pedamonte, what's up, Fred? Johnny found something at the Library of Congress. Oh, gosh. What was it? Cocaine? Thank you, Fred. Mark Shaw, what's up? What do you want to bet that Ketanji couldn't tell you what FIRAC stands for? It's a good question. It's a good question. And I think what you're talking about is legal analysis. So Ketanji, of course, would be like the Supreme Court judge. So I didn't actually learn it as FIRAC. I learned it as IRAC or IREAC. So this is like legal analysis. The IRAC format in legal analysis is issue, rule, application, or analysis and conclusion. So IRAC. You see a lot of case briefs that are formulated that way. What's the issue? What's the rule? How do you apply the facts to the rule? And then you come to a conclusion. What's the legal conclusion? FIRAC, I think, is facts, right? So facts come first, like you summarize the facts. There's another version called IREAC, IREAC, which is also the issue, the rule, an explanation of the rule. If you want to kind of get some bonus points on that, explain what the rule means, then apply it. Then you come to your conclusion. Ketanji, I don't know. She just talks a lot. I don't know how much legal analysis she actually does. Hey, what's going on? We got Spudman, says they need to build camps in the desert, a la Sheriff Joe, then put illegals caught for reentry in them for the duration of the sentence instead of deporting them. So you just make it miserable. You just kind of keep them on the border and they can build a wall on the border. James Anderson says start cattle branding. Gavin. Yeah. Good comment, James. Hey, Jeff Monhe. What's up, Jeff? Says this is outrageous. I think, Jeff, that came in during the Beryl Howell opinion, and that is true. Happy J Day. What's up, JB? Thank you, JB, for bringing in 10 new members. We appreciate you doing this. Mark L, what's up? Ricky Bobby's coming in. Skoluka Gaming. We got Steve Dubois. My name is here. We got Lord Tatman, Steele Manning, Chris is here, and Caleb Jorgensen, along with I Believe. All gifted members, courtesy of JB in the house. Thank you for doing that, JB. Hey, NY Renal says, Alien Enemies Act puts forth only the president to be able to engage in foreign policy. Trump can bring it to its statutory minimum under the Alien Enemies Act. He is definitely using it. We'll see what the Supreme Court lets him do. Chubby. Hey, Beryl clearly views all her cases through the lens of orange man bad. Not even a hint of any bias there. I know that's dripping in sarcasm, Chubby, as it should be. But she's just biased from the beginning. You can just tell. Knox is here. Almost like she's so mad at Trump, she's not even a judge anymore. Knox, my theory on Biden's illness disclosure, the redemption tour was not going well. Now Jill can take him on the cancer tour and no one can ask any questions. They must just give sympathy and love. Yeesh. Yeah, it's pretty gross what they're doing with Joe. And we talked a lot about that this morning on the Membo stream, Knox, if you missed it. But lots of questions. Lots and lots of questions. Ollie, what's up? Thank you for bringing in Jan Marr in the house. Welcome, Jan Marr, courtesy of Ollie. Ollie also says, can Trump do the opposite of amnesty for illegals? Yeah, I think that's basically what he's doing. If amnesty is you're allowed to stay here forever, the opposite is you cannot stay here at all. And that's what he's doing. Alana Noble, what's going on, says the Institute of Peace is a money laundering operation. Yeah, which is probably why Beryl Howell wants it back on, so all of her DC friends can get their money. Hey, Sev Russ, what's up, Sev Russ? Says, hey, I sometimes listen to the streams when I can't hear them live. I do this while working out. The streams do make me angry at times, so I lift more. Thanks, Rob. Turning lemons into lemonade. Yeah, I'm with you on that, man. I'm with you on that. I'll listen to Scott Adams sometimes when I'm working out, too. Throw on Scott. What's Scott saying today? See what he's up to. And yeah, sometimes that hits me, too. I get a little bit more angry at times and lift more. Happy to be there supporting your gains, Sev Russ. Let's get jacked, baby. No necks. No necks. Hey, FD Man says, with Howell's words and judgment, she just wrote that Trump is illegitimate with her illegitimate leaders. What kind of an idiot is this judge? I know. She's like, well, I don't really know where this lives. This is a novel question. I have no idea where it exists at all. But the only conclusion I can come in with is it's valid. What? You just explained it. If you can't find a home for it, it is unconstitutional. It has to go. So what are you doing? FD Man says, Comey has got to be one of the dumbest former law enforcement dipsticks ever. He looked like a highly Buttigieg. Now there are protesters using his post as a protest chant. No, they're all in on it, man. They love it when you off people. They like, eliminating CEOs in the back. They're okay with Comey, wants the 86-47, all the things. Ollie says 40 million illegals versus how many magistrates and judges? Yeah, not as nearly as many. It is an odd one, an imbalance, no doubt, Ollie. FD Man says, hey, reading the tea leaves regarding Epstein, I believe that the case is so big that they will hold what they have to close to the vest until they have all ducks in a row. They continue the talking points until it's time. I hope you're right about that, but I don't know. They seem pretty... He killed himself. Stop asking us about it. Doan. January 6th, read Courage Under Fire by Stephen Sund. We have read that. That's a great book. I highly recommend that book. And one of the most shocking, I think, pieces of that book is when he talks about how they sent national security to their families' homes, but not to Congress. Okay, so like everybody who was there, like in the mix of things, they all made sure their families were protected, and then let Congress let what happened happen there. Pretty sick. Yeah, it makes your stomach turn. Leonard, what do you think of conservatives rallying around the vindication of Ashley Babbitt as a symbol of Dem corruption? I don't know. I think that's a good question. I think that I'm glad that Ashley Babbitt's family is getting some closure and getting some compensation for her murder, if that's what you're asking. That I'm a fan of. I think Dem corruption, like I've never really thought of Ashley Babbitt as a symbol of Democratic corruption. I think that her story is symbolic of, a much broader, I think, sickness in the country. But I don't know that I would say it's like Dem corruption. I don't know. I've never thought about the question in that context. But I am glad that their family's getting some closure, which might be what you're asking. Obi, what's up? Why don't the Trump administration just play the word game like the Democrat with the word migrants and call them foreigners? Then they can say this all falls under foreign affairs. I see what you're saying there. And they are label people, so that might work. Hey, Alana says Mossad put the ropes and sheets in Epstein's hand, and then Epstein pulled it. Yeah. No, he definitely did it himself. He just had some undercover spies also assisting him in it. FD Man, releasing the files will throw any case into the toilet. Let them work the Epstein case. Rob, you know that evidence is not presented until the trial. No one has been arrested yet. Well, who's going to be arrested if he offed himself? No one. Coyote, may our Lord send his healing grace to Scott Adams. Thank you for that prayer, Coyote. May our Lord send his healing grace to our friend Scott Adams. Amen. FD Man, the DOJ is swamped with district court psycho judges, all other promises, ending the UKR versus the Russia war, Middle East deals, and so on. Epstein's on the list, but not at the top. Trump has only been in office 119 days. Yeah, I guess my point is, if they're saying that Epstein offed himself, that's it. Like, that's the end of that. So we're not going to get to the bottom of that at all, right? Like, I don't expect Kash to come out and say, and Dan, we had to tell you all this for 2 years while we were working the case up, and then we charged him. But we had to tell you just to dupe you on it. It's because we were working. Like, I just don't. I hope I'm wrong on that. I hope we come back and eat our words. And they're like, yeah, here are the people that killed him. And they were all run by Hillary Clinton, and Liz Cheney was in there too. But I got my doubts. We'll see. We'll see. I appreciate your optimism there on that. Glass half full FD man. What's up? James Anderson says, afuera, más rápido, vamos, SpaceX. Blast off, blast off, blast off. Thank you, James Anderson. FD man says, rather be on SpaceX than that Bezos Bozo's fake space pod that uses the special fake tool to open the door that is like a crappy supermarket 25-cent kiddie ride. Yeah, I know. That those space bimbos were up there and, floating around over there. Wild. Pinochet's helicopter tours. Do you have to be a lawyer to file an amicus brief? No, I don't think so. I've seen many other civilians and other people just file, civilians, file briefs, like non-lawyers file briefs, and sometimes judges will accept them, sometimes not. I would love to file spoof amici, like an ISIS terrorist who needs an Institute of Peace and USAID money to launder, teach peace. Yeah, I don't think the judge would accept that one, but yeah, it would be funny. You're like an amicus brief from the international organization in support of ISIS and fentanyl dealers. And they're like, hey, this is causing us irreparable harm. My fentanyl business is like in the toilet since the U.S. Institutes of Peace has calmed down. Totally screwed. Judge like, well, it's true. Need your fentanyl in America. Yeah. Good to see you. And the terrorists, all the things. Funny. Great comment from Pinochet. And my friends, thank you for sending those in. What a beautiful stream it has been. Let's say hello to our friends on X. Then we'll wrap it up and we will have an after party, baby, on the day. Let's see who's over on X. Joining us, we got Fred Pedamonte. Says, Johnny said he found this at the Library of Congress. What did he find? Oh, the 28th Amendment. It's U.S. due process for illegal aliens. Wow, interesting. Says, regarding illegal aliens, due process. This is the 25th Amendment? I didn't know this one. Capture, confirm you're in the U.S. illegally, and you have immediate expulsion. Oh, that's what the new one will be. Which is basically what Trump is trying to do with the Alien Enemies Act. Legitimately, and they're trying to stop him. Hey, what's up, Dirty Coins? Great to see you, Dirty Coins. Bowling AZ. Great to see you over there. TJ King says, hey, regarding Epstein, remember A.G. Barr's dad, who was CIA in World War II, gave Epstein his first job out of college as a math teacher. Bill Barr's dad also wrote a sci-fi novel of a planet run by oligarchs trafficking in kids. Ugh. Bill Barr's dad said that? Yeah, it's a weird book to write. All right, so my friends, thank you for sending those in. Very nice and generous of you. Spudman wrote this. Says, according to the rules of the Supreme Court of the United States, an amicus may be filed by an attorney admitted to practice before the highest court of a state. There you go, Spudman. Thanks for the correction on that. So unless you're a terrorist lawyer, don't file your amicus brief. All right, so my friends, what a beautiful day it has been. Thank you for hanging with us. Thanks for watching the show. We're going to post another video as soon as we're done here about Ed Martin and FBI agents, because the FBI agents are free. So we're going to post another video in there. There's a great promo in there about a mining company that you're going to be super excited to hear about. But we'll post that after the show. So if you want to watch something else, check that out. We'll link to it down here below. But another video on Ed Martin and an update that we couldn't get in here today. We also then, of course, we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to get into it again, my friends. Right now, membos, stick around. YouTube membos, stick around. Locals membos, stick around. And we'll have our after party where we'll debrief and chill out for a bit. But my friends, that is going to be it for us on the day. It has been a beautiful stream. Thank you for being here. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for all the donos. Thanks for being membos. Thanks for being awesome. Thanks for sending some prayers up for our friend Scott Adams and everybody else who is going through stuff like that. We want healing, love, and energy beamed right into their bodies. Dan says, personal amicus brief can't be associated with other business. All right, there we go. So some good amicus updates. Thanks, everybody, for those. All right, so my friends, we'll leave it there on the evening. Thanks for checking out the other video that we post. Thanks for coming back here tomorrow, because we will be back here tomorrow to get into it again. And hey, thanks to our mods and meme smiths, K-Bean, Carrie B, Donut Mind Me, John, we got Janek, Dog Digger, G-Gum, Elliot, and Just Rhonda, our purveyor of fine emojis. We appreciate everybody keeping the show on track. My friends, we will pause there for the evening. It's been a beautiful Monday. We're coming back tomorrow to get into it again. And so in order to do that appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.